Hey everyone, it's Dr. Matthew Hernandez here with Ethos Athletes Podcast. I'm here today for the second episode of our nutrition series with Kelli Michelle. Kelli, if you missed the last episode, is with Keep Moving Forward. She holds a master's in nutrition science from ASU, and she also has a NASM certification, and she is a sports nutrition specialist. So Kelli, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about common mistakes in nutrition and how to fix them. And so obviously there are individuals who are looking for ways to improve their nutrition, and some of their goals include improving their athletic performance, losing a little bit of weight, increasing muscle, decreasing fat, and a bunch of different things in between. And there's a lot of things that, obviously there's a lot of information on how to go about following nutrition, but there's also a lot of bad information. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I'll have Kelli go ahead and talk about some of the mistakes that are made, and then what she does to fix those mistakes with her clients. So the very first one we want to talk about today is focusing on the scale. So Kelli, tell me why that's not the best thing to do.
Okay. So we talked a lot in episode 1 about tangible methods of measuring fat loss, and that weight loss, when people look at it, the grand scale of weight loss, most people need to see the scale drop every week to keep going, right? And that's just not going to be the case every week with fat loss. So if you're losing body fat only, you're not losing muscle, water, or any kind of bile, then basically what you're looking at is a very small amount. I would say on average 0.25 to 1.5 pounds of body fat a week is about as much as a person can lose. And on average, I would say it's more around 0.5 pound to 1 pound a week. That's very, very slow for most people, and they could get very discouraged with that, especially for females when they don't look at their cycle. So looking at the scale can be a very deceptive measure, and it can be defeating, because even for females, if they're going into their cycle week, they're not going to see a lot of fat loss that week usually. The same thing with the cycle week. Your uterus is 3 times its normal size that week. You're probably not going to see a lot of change on the scale that week. It can be discouraging. And if you have 2 weeks like that in a row, that can be enough for some people to want to quit, throw in the towel, and be one of those people that are like, well, I'm not losing any weight. This method isn't working, right? So I would say the biggest mistake that we do see is people getting too affixed with scale weight in general. What I do to remedy that, especially when people start with me, I actually start it right out of the gate, is when I take a person in, I ask them to take progress pictures for me on the day that they start. Because if you don't do that, you will wish that you had 90 days into macro tracking. And that's the method that I use for my clients. So I really try to have them focus on every 30 days, taking a new set of progress pictures, front and back, hands down at side, same lighting, same situation, same time of day, early in the morning when they first wake up and step on the scale, after they've gone to the bathroom, and obviously naked, if you can. So the second method would be tape measuring yourself with just a simple, measuring tape around the waist, buttocks and thighs, chest, and right above the belly button, around the arms, and at the highest point, obviously, with right underneath the tricep, where it inserts into the lat. That's typically where people hold the most body fat. Would be obviously predominantly for females, buttocks and thighs, lower abdominal cavity, and for men, again, they're usually not leg stores as much as they are midsection stores and back stores. So, and that's again just on average. The other thing that people can do is go have body mass index testing, or go have a DEXA scan done, or a bod pod. They've usually got on Groupon and some of the discount apps on your phone, maybe a package of 2 or 3 of those. And I would have a starting point so that you know that what you're doing is working, and you check that every 90 days to 120 days. I don't think that there's any reason to have your body fat tested every month. That's kind of obsessive in my opinion. So if you're really wanting to track progress, what I would do is, get your body fat percentage done, have it retested every couple months. See if you're going the right direction. Obviously, the most important method is, are your clothing fitting better? Do you have something that you want to get into that you're getting closer to getting into? So if you got a dress or you got a pair of pants, my gentlemen always send me pictures of themselves in their pants with their belt way out in front and the pants way out in front, and they're like half the person that they were when they started with me. Your current belt and your current pants situation will say a lot about your process. So maybe you've only lost 20 pounds on the scale, but you've lost 10% body fat. That's quite a bit. And that will make a huge difference when you look at the person. I always say that the people that you work with are the second best indicator of your affirmation. So when people start noticing that you're losing weight, it's working. So I try to get my clients about the second or third month to not weigh themselves every single day. Even though that's really important in the beginning, because I want them to understand, why does scale weight fluctuate? Because those can be other major contributing factors of people quitting. So scale weight fluctuation can happen for so many reasons. Hormones. Obviously we talked about that with the female cycle. The week after cycle, your hormones are the most optimal. It's when you should go hard in the gym. You're going to feel the best. Testosterone's at an all-time high. Yay! It's also pretty good the second week. Going into the third week, obviously, we know that progesterone and estrogen are starting to shift a little bit. So is testosterone. And you're going to start feeling kind of that little lull, a little bit more emotional, a little bit rocky there, and maybe you might not be as disciplined that third week or the fourth week, the cycle week, where your hormones are shifting and you might be more prone to having cravings, etc. Obviously, Dr. Matt is probably going to be pretty good at suggesting some things that will make that easier on you. I definitely do that with my clients, but that will cause scale weight fluctuation. Training volume. If you start a new training plan, that is definitely going to make your scale weight fluctuate, because again, you're tearing and repairing muscle fiber, and it takes water to do that. It's a healing process. When you tear muscle, it's going to, you're going to swell. If you do that day after day after day on top of cardio, that can be another reason you're not seeing the scale come down. So for my clients, typically ask for them to take 1 or 2 rest days in a row every other week or every couple weeks, so that I can see their true actual and factual scale reading. Your high scale reading for the week and your low scale reading for the week usually do not stay for more than 1 day. That's wonderful. That means it's not actual or factual, right? So getting caught up on day-to-day scale weighing is really an oxymoron. I would really focus primarily on adherence to your tracking, which is another reason people make mistakes, is they're counting calories, but they're not counting where those calories are coming from. I talked briefly about that in episode 1 with people on their MyFitnessPal tracking device. How do they know where to go to get their macros set up correctly? I would say this to you. There is a graph in MyFitnessPal. And if you go into your nutrition portion or the nutrients section, if you tap on that at the end of the night, you can see where your macronutrient intake is coming from. If your fats are at 50%, carbs are at 20%, and protein is at 30%, then you have a starting place. You know where to start, right? If your goal is fat loss and you're eating 50% of your calories from fat, maybe you need to bring that down just a little bit. So you can make those adjustments. It's a really good place to start. But one of the common mistakes is just to follow some fad diet plan or a meal plan where you eat 10 things and you can't have any joy or any happiness and go out with your family because you're on a quote unquote diet and everybody has to hear about it. That's a drag. I don't think it's sustainable. It's one of the reasons I get people that come to sign up with me, because they're sick and tired of doing the yo-yo dieting over and over again. Bottom line is, some of these diet plans work really well for somebody who enjoys a high-fat diet and no carbs. But again, that's 1 to 5% of the population. We need something that appeals to the masses, that they can sustain, that's going to keep you focused. It's going to keep you dangling that little carrot out in front of you, right? So another reason for people having error in their fat loss, and I would say muscle gaining as well, would be unrealistic expectations, number 1, and number 2, doing too much cardio. When you're trying to put on muscle mass, very good to isolate all of variables. And it's the same thing with fat loss. It would be better for you to isolate and have the same variables every week. So the same training duration. So if you're lifting weights for 45 minutes to an hour, 3 days a week, that would be one of your stable variables. If you're doing 20 minutes of cardio following those training sessions, that would be a stable variable. Adding in a 45-minute session just because you want to would also change the equation that week. If you're in a deficit, it could put you further into deficit, which might mean that your body that week will just slow down and accommodate for having less calories, which means you won't lose any body fat. If you can isolate as many variables as possible when you're focusing on a fat loss goal or a muscle gaining goal, it's not always better to do more cardio. I would say stick with your strength training, and if you need to use cardio as a tool at the end, then at least you have that left to use, and you haven't overused that. If you're doing 45 minutes of cardio every single day, you don't have anything to add. You're going to be then having to go to an hour, and that's not even normal, reasonable, or tangible for a person to strength train and then do an hour of cardio. You'll be spending 2 hours at the gym, and to me, that's excessive. There's no need for it. You're going to start losing muscle mass in your diet, and you're going to start losing it faster because, again, we don't really know if your variable is cardio and you're doing 2 or 3 different sessions every week and it's not accounted for and you're not being fed for it, then, you could be dipping into muscle mass there, which is not good because as you lose muscle mass, now you learn the capacity to burn body fat at a higher rate. The more muscle you have, the more efficient fuel burner you're going to be. That's why when people lose body fat, a lot of times they're surprised that they need to eat more food. Well, that is the case. So again, there you go with adding lean muscle mass. A lot of times when people add lean mass and they're dropping body fat, they need more food now to add more lean mass. Okay, so it is a very difficult concept for people to wrap their head around because of all of the bad information that's out on the internet saying, eat less, do more, eat less, do more. That only works for a very small portion of the population, and usually that's people who have never dieted in their life. For yo-yo dieters, you will chase your tail 8 ways from Sunday doing that. And again, what worked for you when you were 20 is probably not going to work for you when you're 50 because your hormones are not at the place that they were when you were 20. So that's what I wanted to discuss as being a very critical part of, I would say, 5 to 10% of my population. I discover it very quickly into macro tracking because if you are a coach that looks at data and you look at isolated variables, it'll only take you 30 to 60 days to see that somebody is not losing on a normal scale. They're not, if they're adhering to the protocol and they're doing the plan as it's laid out and they're not seeing success and actually they're gaining, then, that would be my red alert to ask them, have you ever had your hormones tested? And usually they're they're not alarmed by it. They're very accommodating and they will go and get that done. And you discover, oh, it's what I thought. It's low T3 or low T4 or both or low TSH. And alongside that with a lot of females and males discover it fairly easy because obviously testosterone is quote unquote a male hormone, right? It's not. It's just as important for female metabolism and female endocrine as it is with the males. So hormone function is another reason why people can stall out and not see optimal fat loss. The other thing can be issues with sleep. So if they're sleep deprived, your body does a lot of its rejuvenating a growth hormone and reproducing all of your hormones at night. That could be the combination of issues right there is that sleep deprivation, overtraining, running yourself candle burning from both ends is causing the hormone insufficiency or it's contributing to it. We don't really know. Obviously, you'd have to isolate every single variable on every person to figure out what caused the hormone insufficiency. But they are going undetected and people are now trying to outtrain their poor hormones. And all that will do is put you in a situation that is worse. So you can't outtrain your hormones. If you haven't had them tested, you're over the age of 30, I would consider you to be in the category that should be getting them tested. Because again, the stressful life that we live as Americans, we cram so much into our workday now. There's very little time for anything else, including personal time, managing, your family life, et cetera, let alone sleep. So, if you're in the category that sleeps under 6 hours or under 7 hours, I would definitely get those hormones tested if you've seen that your weight loss has been sluggish. Now, again, if we go back up over all of the things I've already discussed and you're not doing any of those properly, I would address those first. And then if you don't see improvements over the 30 to 60 day period of isolating those variables and doing a better job with limiting your amount of cardio, eating stable macros or stable calories, caloric intake, having some flexibility in your nutrition plan so that you don't YOLO on the weekends, and YOLO means you only live once, so that would mean that you go out and blow it out for the whole day. You don't just maybe have one meal off your plan, you have a full day off your plan, which can contribute to about a week to 10 days of recoil. It's really awful. Why would you eat clean all week long and then recoil every weekend and then start over and just chase your tail week after week after week? I would rather you have more calories Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and stay on your plan and adhere to that rather than have to binge eat on the weekend because you underate all week, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's another thing that is really a big mistake that people make. They set themselves up to eat far too little food in a calorie deficit of, 500 or more calories right out of the start, and then they increase their training. And so they've changed 60 different variables. They're not focusing on one thing at a time where, maybe you get your nutrition in check first. You start tracking your macros and you start looking at, I'm not very good at hitting my fat goal. That would be the first place to start. Then look at your carbs, start trying to hit your carb and your protein goal because those are worth the same amount of calories, 4 calories per gram. Fix that first, then move to the training aspect of things. Make sure you're taking progress pictures. Make sure that you're taking your measurements. Put those on a whiteboard. Make it visible so that every day when you walk into the kitchen, it's on the whiteboard on your refrigerator. You can also put your starter pictures on the refrigerator, and that'll definitely be a reminder of why you don't want to stay where you're at and why it's important for you to stay on your program and follow the protocol, right? So there we have some of the common mistakes. I would say probably the number one reason people quit is they are too lazy to prepare and plan ahead. Okay? Preparation prevents poor performance. The 4 Ps. I had 5 Ps in there, but it was piss poor performance, so I decided to omit that. But it's the 4 Ps. So preparation prevents poor performance, right? And that can go for anyone, not just an athlete. That is actually very, very important with my fat loss clients in general. If you fail to prepare at least 2 or 3 days out of the week, that could set you off into a I don't care mode, right? Into, I'll pick it up on Monday. How many times have you told yourself, I'll pick it up on Monday? Sunday is your Monday. Sunday is the most important day of the week. Most people start their traditional work week on Monday. If you don't, then obviously your Sunday will be a different day, right? If you start your week on a Wednesday, then your Monday is Tuesday, if that makes sense. You always should be planning ahead the day before you're going to start blowing it out. So Sunday, I mentally will have my clients prepare to destroy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Usually then they will re-prep their food on Wednesday or Thursday night, adding some lean proteins, some fattier proteins into their protocol, their meal plan. And again, I like them to rotate their foods all the time because Matt will probably be glad to talk about this a little bit. But if you do not rotate your food, you can build up tolerations to certain foods, which can also be an issue with digestion and metabolism. So I don't have to talk about probiotics today. We'll talk about that in a different episode. But that can be a big issue is, you get sick of eating the same thing. I actually know some people who never get sick of eating the same thing. I don't know how to do that. I don't think anybody wouldn't like to have a rotation of different foods that they can swap in and out. So preparation is really important. Go and get some freezer meals and things that are higher quality from Sprouts or Whole Foods or something that you like. Again, turn that package around. Some of these quote unquote healthy foods are just as bad, if not worse, than the regular version. So you can go and get the healthy Oreo and you turn it around and there's 60 different fillers instead of 10. I would prefer you really, really do a good job of accurately reading food labels and knowing what you're putting in your body. So, just to give you a little bit more in-depth answer on common mistakes, too many variables, looking at the scale as being the number one verification for your success, you will quit. Over and over again, you will quit. You know you've done it. Stop doing that. Weigh yourself at the beginning of the week, weigh yourself at the end of the week, and see if you've made progress. And then if you haven't, weigh yourself in 3 more days, so day 1 through day 10, and see if you've made progress. Again, if your clothing is fitting you better, if you're feeling better overall because, you're eating evenly spaced out meals, you're eating until you're satiated, satisfied, and you're having more flexibility in your diet plan than you've ever had, then that's kind of a win. If your clothes are fitting better, that's a win right there, right? If you're dropping a half a pound to a pound a week, that's a win. It might not be where you want it to be, but I'm sorry. Again, fat loss is very slow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just to reiterate some of the things that Kelli mentioned, she already just talked about, keep in mind there are a lot of variables when it comes to nutrition and weight management and, losing fat, gaining muscle, all that stuff. Some of that includes hormones, sleep, and obviously the nutrition, the aspect of it. Don't focus on the scale. Instead, look at, I think the best advice you gave for that one is just looking at how your clothes fit. I mean,
yeah.
Do you feel like they're tight? Do you feel like you feel leaner in your clothes? That's a super easy way to check that. You can also use tape measuring, use the progress pictures for sure. I love that idea. You can choose to do body composition measuring if you like. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep in mind there's a lot of good systems and a lot of bad systems out there. So I know you mentioned Bod Pod as one of the ones that you like.
Yeah, they're okay. Again, please don't take that personal Bod Pod. I'm not tearing you apart. It's a good place to start for a beginner. The DEXA scan is very, very precise, very good, and it's a little more expensive. So I always like to give a less expensive option and a more expensive option. Again, like I did with the freezer meals. If you're looking high quality, Walmart actually is carrying a lot of organic food now. So there's no excuse for you to make that you cannot prepare and plan ahead. It really comes down to the why. Is this important to you right now? If it's not, then maybe you don't focus on weight loss right now. You focus on getting your finances in a better place. Or, if the why is greater in certain other areas and it's not as great in, physical well-being or overall weight loss, then you've got to address those other things that are more important first. Because this really is a learning system. And again, it's all about learning your body. If you're a drinker, you're going to see that scale weight fluctuate a lot. If you don't sleep, you're going to see your scale weight fluctuate a lot. If you've got some uncommon behavior patterns, you're probably going to see more scale weight fluctuation. I talk about alcohol because that's another thing people are like, oh, I won't drink for, 6 months. And I'm like, why? Well, because I'm doing this fitness plan. I said, no, you have a drink when you want to drink. You budget it into your system. Really? I'll still lose body fat? Yeah. If you do drink once a week, it's not going to kill you. Now, if you drink once a week every single week, you're probably going to go slower. But again, why would you take something out of your system and then YOLO? You might as well make this a lifestyle. And the only way to do that is to budget for it, to plan for it, and to enjoy it. And that's, the long-term sustainability of a functional nutrition plan. And I feel that flexible dieting works well for everybody because, athletes love it. They're able to eat so much food. They figure out that they don't have to eat clean, that their performance is actually just as good, if not better, with a little bit more junk food. And I would say that is, it's a glucose thing. So, who doesn't need to have a bunch of junk food? Sedentary people that sit in an office desk 8 hours a day. I mean, why would you need all that junk food when you just sit there? Now, if you want to have a treat, then you can if it fits your structure. But again, my job is to educate people on how to do this efficiently for themselves. So every person's going to be a little bit different, and everybody's mistakes will be a little bit different, but those are opportunities for you to learn. So I think the reason why, people ask me this a lot, and I only bring this up because I'm not trying to toot my horn. I'm just trying to toot the horn of macro tracking. And coaches that are doing it really well probably have the same exact success rate that I do. If you've got people starting, if you're not educating them that there's going to be bumps and little barriers along the way and hurdles that they're going to have to jump, then you're really setting them up to fail at macro tracking. I come out right away and say, I need 30 days of learning from you. If this is not a good time, I want you to put it off until you can give me that 30 days of good learning. You and I are going to be married for 30 days. We are going to talk back and forth through either voice text or we're going to either text message or voice message each other, or we're going to email back and forth. You're going to get to know me. I'm going to get to know you. It's like dating. You can't really figure out if somebody is a good fit for your program unless you date them for a while, right? So after 90 days, most people are a phenomenal fit for my program. If they're not, usually I have to have a conversation with them about their habits and their behavior. And a lot of times it goes very, very well. So it's all about communication back and forth with your coach. If you know that you can't do this and be accountable on your own, I would say don't set yourself up to make that mistake. Save the money up, hire somebody that you know you'll be a good fit with, and tell them that you are committed, and then make that commitment to yourself. Take the progress pictures. Those are very humbling, let me tell you. I take those myself. If I start to get a little bit more loose on my tracking, and I like that because I think, coaches too need to have the opposite side of the spectrum. They've got to have, time periods where they're leaner and time periods where they're more flexible so that you can share that with your clients. You can't really share flexible dieting with your clients if you're an orthorexic eater and all you eat is clean all the time and, you don't have any variety and you're that weirdo, so to speak, that just runs lean all the time. Again, I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's something that I should promote. It was very difficult for me to get to that spot because of, where I used to be when I was coaching very high performance athletes and people that I would put on stage at under 5% body fat. Again, that's a whole different ball game and not one that I think is healthy or sustainable. So, again, you can chase your tail or you can just decide to conquer one obstacle at a time. If you need someone to handhold you, then you need a coach. And if you don't need someone to handhold you, then what you need to do is just make sure that you've got structure in place, and then you're using your method. You're not adding any more variables. You're taking time to assess what you've done so far and see if you've made progress. If not, you make adjustments and then you keep going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most valuable things, you mentioned having the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And one of the most valuable things that I think working with a nutrition coach is going to give somebody is learning what unrealistic expectations are. Because it's funny that people don't know that. And you need someone who is constantly working with people on their nutrition to understand what an unrealistic expectation is.
Yeah. Part of that is the media's fault.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Part of that is like you go on Instagram and all these ads pop up for 30 days. You could do abs for 5 minutes and you're going to have abs like me. No, abs are genetic. Okay. Yeah. And so are calves, You're given what you're given, and obviously you can change those. You can change those features, especially aesthetically. I love that. Genetically, we're internally we're predisposed to certain things that we can't change, right? But aesthetically, we can change if we are willing to outtrain those poor genetic areas, right? So it's neat to see people defy those odds, but it's also very discouraging for somebody who thinks that they can look like that to beat away at their body, thinking that if they do cardio, they're going to get a six-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do have to get your body fat down low enough to see your abdominal cavity. But a lot of times, if you don't have the abs, you've got to build them.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
If you don't have the calves, you've got to build them. So there's all these unrealistic expectations that Instagram shows you, big booties and this and that. And, a lot of this, you guys, is smoke and mirrors. I think it's something that people really, really need to pay attention to. A lot of it is fake. I go to the gym with these women. They do not look anything like their photos in real life. They look like me and you, and I consider myself for a 40-year-old to be in pretty good shape. So you got to be okay with where you're at, and then you got to be good with the progress that you make along the way. And you got to notice the little milestones before you notice, the finish line. The little milestones along the way. So it's like, if you're training an Olympic athlete and they win a couple races, but then they lose a couple races. Well, I would say this: I learn more from when my clients lose a race than when they win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We learn a lot about what we can do better. We learn a lot about environment. Mm-hmm. We learn a lot about people around us. We learn about, toxic things that you shouldn't be eating or drinking before you go to a big meet. I will use alcohol as an example because, again, you guys, it's not a macronutrient. It's a toxin, hence the word intoxicated. It always baffles me that people will drink alcohol the night before they have a huge game or a huge event. And they only do that with me once. If they do that, they're definitely reprimanded. And obviously they don't do it without knowing that it's something that I feel very passionately about, that, hey, you don't drink before a big event that you're going to, train all these hours and hours and hours to be great at. Unless you're just some kind of genetic freak and you can do that, right? And again, there is that 1% out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, because one of them is my coach, one of my coaches, and we'll have her on for one of the lives if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Because, man, there's a beast in every category, but again, you're not usually that beast, okay? And so I think, setting up realistic expectations for yourself is something that's so important. It'll stop you from making so many common, ridiculous mistakes. And, people ask me all the time, Kelli, do you hear just the craziest stuff? And I'm like, no, because I do hear some crazy stuff once in a while. I mean, I work with women. That says it all. I work with men and women, but I'm going to be honest.
Stay quiet on that one.
My women say some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard. But it's not often, because I educate my clients. Usually I never put something in front of them that's going to cause more confusion than it will cause clarity. And so I think, if you can do one thing, it's please stay off the internet. Please stay off of Instagram. Search around for people that are the best at what they do and have results. Don't look at people who have no results. And again, you've got to realize that some people are using other people's progress photos. You want to look at people's progress photos as looking tangible and actually real. I can pick out people's fake and phony progress photos on Instagram easily, but most people can't. And that's why they spend money on these coaches that pretty much take their money and give them nothing. So, I'm not saying that my system is the only system, but I'm saying research your system, so that you don't make mistakes, costly ones, expensive ones. You want to find experts that have a great education and results in those ares. Yeah,
no, I think that's great advice for sure. Well, one thing I did want to ask you is, I've had people come into my office, whether they come in for sports injuries or men's health related, whatever it is, and they'll tell me that they're doing macro tracking, and usually it was something, they watched a few YouTube channels, and, they picked up how to do it, right? Yeah. And so they'll go and do that aspect, and when I look at their nutrition and what their diet looks like, they'll tell me I have a pristine diet, I hit all my macros, I do that, and sure enough, I'll look at their protein, carb, fat, and they're all the numbers that they're wanting to have, right? But when I look at what the carb section is comprised of, a lot of it's going to be like rice. They might have bread or whatever random stuff they have. But what I notice at the end of the day is that they're so focused on hitting their protein, carb, fat, and then I look at what they're actually eating, and there's no vegetables in there.
There's no quality.
Yeah, and so
there's no fiber.
And so I've been fortunate to where most of those people haven't had a nutrition coach, and so none of them have been your clients by any means.
Yeah.
But, so how do you help your clients
they would be
focus on that?
Total weirdos. You'd have like the A+ students that are like, oh no, we can't have that. It doesn't have any fiber in it. But yeah, no, I see that. And I will say this as just a common intake. So my question and answering form, the reason I ask people what a normal day looks like in their life, and again, I will usually look at their MyFitPal 7-day tracking to kind of see, do they eat a lot of junk food? Do they eat out a lot? Because I need to know as their coach, what areas can I work with them on once they get the hang of this, right? Fiber is one of my requirements. So my clients can't eat like that. They can't eat rice and potato all day, or they're never going to hit their fiber requirements. They also can't eat candy all day. Okay. Why? They're not going to hit their fiber requirement. So my fiber requirement is part of the macro tracking advice. And again, we do really want to be setting people up to keep their blood sugar stable for as long as possible between eating. Snacking is great and all, but 7 meals a day is not great because you're going to have 7 insulin hits. I would rather you have 3 insulin hits and wait longer between eating and be satiated and have your blood sugar stay stable all day long instead of having 800, you have to prep 8 meals too. You got to prep 7 meals. It's a lot of prep. I'd rather prep 3 meals and a snack and call it a day. Wait longer between eating, have larger meals. That also sets you up for being able to go out with family. Sets you up, to be able to hit your fiber requirements of 5 to 7 grams at each meal. So let me give you just a little example of what a meal without fiber would look like. Okay, so I know exactly what Dr. Matt's talking about. A lot of these systems don't teach people how to pair their meals with a fat, protein, carb, and fiber. So a meal with no carb would be, let's say, a hot dog. Okay, so we've got a hot dog and a white bun. So we've got a fat, a carb, and a protein source there, but we have no fiber. So what would a substitute for that be? Let's say a lean ground beef burger and a sweet potato. So the burger obviously would have no bun. Instead, we've substituted that empty carb with no fiber, which is a complex carb. It's fine if you're going to have a vegetable. And we're going to substitute that for a carb that has fiber, like the sweet potato, the yam, a couple, you could do the bun with a couple of cups of green beans. So adding more dense nutrition fiber to your meal, more volume, is going to be the key there, right? So you're not just eating these empty carbs that are very quick into your system, again, right before bed. And I always tell my clients, there's a good way to do it. Why don't you have, if you want some of the quicker carbs or, more junk food, why don't you do that around your training when you're going to use it most? And quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then why don't you have something more practical that's going to hit your fiber requirement in your dinner meal that'll keep you satiated so you're not hungry again before bed? And, maybe you've only got protein left to fill before you go to bed. Well, that's great because you can supplement that in a shake or have some, non-fat Greek yogurt or some non-fat cottage cheese or whatever you feel, comfortable with. I don't do dairy myself, so usually I'll just do a little vegan protein shake or something before bed. But most people are left filling primarily protein at night, if anything. So there's 2 different scenarios. Another option would be, let's say you want to go to Filiberto's, and Filiberto's has those huge white flour tortillas that are about 80 grams of carbs and about 18 grams of fat per tortilla because it's as big as a road map, right? It's huge. And they put beans, refried beans, by the way, with lard in them and cheese and sometimes carne asada, right? If I can say that correctly, carne asada.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Matt's like, you're good. They put that in there. There is very little fiber. The only fiber that they're getting is just from those refried beans, right? So, and it is a huge log of fat and a lot of carbs in one meal. So it's all carbs and fat. I see this a lot too. And very little protein. So we might have hit the protein requirement because the Filiberto's burrito is big enough for 3 people. Better than that, why don't we create our own burrito at home, have a whole wheat or whole grain tortilla or no tortilla like I do the burrito bowls instead with black beans, brown rice, quinoa. Some people like to add corn. I don't do corn myself. It's a little high glycemic for me. It does spike my insulin up a little too high. Some shredded carrots and shredded lettuce and chicken, shrimp, something like that. And then you've got a more complete meal. So that's the difference between pairing with fiber and pairing without fiber. Okay?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comparison. So
yeah.
I think that's super important because I don't know how many times I've seen it where people come in and say, oh yeah, I hit my carbs. Okay, you just had Filiberto's tortilla. Like that's solid. No, that's
and they filled their calories, the remaining carb calories at night with Tootsie Rolls before bed, and it's like, yeah, I mean, that's fine and all if that's the way you want to do it, but it really is pretty haphazard, in my opinion.
For sure.
Especially if you're looking at somebody who, wants to go to sleep very well. Like if they have sleep disruptions, it's like you don't want to take 17 things that are not very good to do before sleep, which is caffeine and sugar. And, I'm having a ton of caffeine and sugar before bed and saying, well, you drink caffeine and you have sugar before bed. Duh.
Yeah.
No wonder you have to take Tylenol PM, It's like, why don't we eliminate those couple things and then we'll work on, the things that we think are working.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, there's a lot of mistakes out there. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot.
We might have to do a whole nother episode on dispelling the myths because I'm going to the LA Dietetics Convention in 4 weeks and I'm so excited to hear Alan Aragon speak. Oh my gosh.
It'll be perfect. We can do another one when you come back. You can tell us what you learned.
Oh gosh, he's going to just dispel the myths left and right. I know it.
I love it. Well, yeah, so just a quick summary about what we talked about today. So don't focus on the scale. Instead, use, again, your clothes, progress pictures, tape measuring. All that is great.
Yeah.
Don't just count calories. Know where they come from. Or don't just count macros. Know where they come from.
Yeah.
Don't forget that you can get carbs from veggies, and don't forget your fiber when you're counting all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Be careful with your expectations. One of the best things you could do to probably manage those unrealistic expectations, or learn that you have unrealistic expectations, is work with a coach like Kelli for that. Be careful with doing too much cardio. That can throw off your hormones quite a bit and really stop your progress on what you're wanting to achieve. Replace some of that with strength training as well.
Yeah.
And then be careful with the variables. So keep in mind there's sleep, hormones, alcohol intake. There's a bunch of different variables that come into play when you're looking at achieving the goals that you're wanting to with your nutrition. So keep all that in mind. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up.
Killer episode, you guys.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Our next episode we're going to be talking about is using macro tracking for athletic performance. We'll have Kelli back for that one as well. So thanks again, Kelli, for being part of this episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks.